Your customer experience journey may have many stages, but it's really important to celebrate each stage because it's a small step. And remember that the most successful customer projects launch with the greatest anticlimax. So it's the less disruption, the less noise you hear about things going live, the better, because it means that your customers are accepting it, it's being delivered well, and people almost don't notice it.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Vineet, and we are really glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual, no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Nick Lygo Baker is a customer experience expert and is the founder of Paradigm CX, a customer experience research agency. He has held leadership roles in some of the best customer research organizations across the globe, running multinational teams for global customer research and SaaS solutions across retail, hospitality, and financial services, repurposing the strategy and measuring the right things for success. Welcome to the show, Nick. We are excited to have you.
All right, thanks. Great to be with you.
Yeah, but folks, before we dive into our interview with Nick, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from our thought leaders across the globe. So, getting back to our interview, Nick, what is your take on experience management, and in what ways are customer experience management and employee experience interdependent?
Well, I think customer experience is a dynamic combination of the conscious and subconscious emotions. And people often see it as a process, but for me, it's about the perceptions a person has about a brand, its people, its technology, products and services, all of which are influenced by every touch point that they experience. So it's beyond operations, marketing. It's really about a person-to-person engagement. And once you understand that, you can start to understand how you can influence it. And then when you start looking at that in terms of managing employee experience and dependency of them, then we start to see how customer experience is really the responsibility of everybody in an organization. And that requires ownership and accountability at the top table to really succeed.
Okay. Like what is the current CX revolution is impacting company culture? So what steps should companies that are lagging behind take more to become more customer oriented?
Well, I think a stat I saw recently was from a Gallup survey which identified that only 41% of employees felt that they that strongly knew and understood what their company stood for, what the purpose was. And that is quite sad, really, to see that, because actually it means that people don't know what they're doing when it comes to why they're working. And as I say, for me, it's about aligning your employee and customer expectations in order to then look at where the gaps are. And then you can start prioritizing how you can improve your employee deliverables to make sure your customers have a better experience. Whereas ordinarily, I think when you look at experience management, it's compartmentalized, it's fragmented. You end up with a lot of businesses doing employee engagement surveys once or twice a year, and that's all about does your boss, do you get paid enough? Do you like your boss? Do you like your working environment? It's not about do you know what your role's contributing to your end customer experience? Are you enriching the lives of people through the purpose of the organization? And that's a missing piece, really, in how organizations can become better at managing the experience of their customers, purely by then looking at this more holistically. So what happens with our employees, what happens with our customers, and then how does that feedback round? How do we then build longer term relationships? And for me, that sort of management experience management enables brands to tie people together, and by tie I'm talking about trust, integrity and empathy, and then managing that experience with the customers and employees, and also through the recruitment process, suppliers, partners, and how you then as an organization can use empathy and integrity to build that trust.
Okay, so basically, if the companies want to improve on their customers, they'll have to first start with the employees.
It's very important. I think you start with purpose. You understand what your organization stands for and what you want to achieve. And it's not about making money. Yeah, Simon Sinek recently spoke about the fact that money is just the fuel to get you to your destination. It's not the reason for being. You have to have a purpose which people resonate with in order for you to have that engagement with your customers, for you to have a business. So it's key then to understand that there are steps organizations can take in order to create a more meaningful relationship with those customers.
Okay, nice. So, what steps should CX teams take to build more meaningful relationships with customers? And is there a pipeline that employees should follow?
And it's as I say, so there are steps, but I think that there's no quick fix. Organizations have to get to grips with their purpose, as I've already mentioned, but then start to look at what for them becoming more customer focused means. It's more often as much a cultural shift as it is a process driven change, and as a result it's a long journey. It's not we'll complete a task and all of a sudden we'll have a magic answer to this. But it's about defining that destination. It helps to define that destination and understand that purpose. But as long as there's that understanding, it's easier to engage with both employees and ultimately customers. Now, I would always suggest with clients that they start to look at a maturity assessment. And by that, it's how ready are you to adopt some of the more customer-focused processes. Now, whether that's changing how you measure your customer engagement, how you collect feedback, how you interpret information. Because for me, one of the biggest things is insight without data is just opinion. And that opinion without validation can be quite damaging if you use that as a foundation to make big business decisions. But it's also equally important to make sure that when you're asking the questions of your customers and your employees to get that knowledge and insights, that you ask the right questions to get there. And quite a bit of the time, those steps that people follow are often based on information that might not be exactly what the customer needs. It might be what they tell you, but it might be what they need, not what they need in order to really get what they are seeking as part of the engagement with you. And that's something that I think comes with time. It comes with an understanding of your customer, and it also comes from actually taking the time to listen to them and not listen to respond, which I would say a lot of companies do. They're trying to find the answer that they were looking for in the conversation, but actually listening to truly understand what the customer is telling you. And sometimes the customer might be trying to tell you things they want you to hear, but at the same time, it's how do you then cut through to those needs to then start addressing them in a way that then builds a stronger and closer relationship.
So it's not just about getting the feedback from surveys and all. I think the companies should focus on what is the customer journey. That will give them a much better picture.
There's a lot of tools available and processes, and companies start quite often with doing some customer research. They build personas. They start to segment their potential customer into groups, and that helps create benchmarks. It creates information which people can then use as markers on their journey. People need targets and goals. It's just the way we're built as human beings. It's very difficult to be too abstract and not have those markers, because it doesn't give people a sense of achievement if you're not really sure where you're going, and that's really key. But on the flip side, it's if those markers and those data points are set in stone as targets, that can be quite damaging, because you start to chase a number and you start to lose focus on the meaning and the why of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. And that's key, because it's important to have those markers in place as a guide. It gives you a sense of that journey is happening. There are improvements taking place. The relationship is improving with customers, employees. But to set targets against some of those markers, particularly if they are less tangible and not directly linked to an action. And we talk about customer research. Net promoter system is a key part of that. Formerly called Net Promoter Score, and that's how people treated it. They treated it as a benchmark, but it's about how somebody would you recommend a business. Now, to say that you would recommend it is based on so many different factors and variables. It's very difficult to be able to say that one particular transaction with a person or a business had enough of an influence to be able to dictate whether that score was related to that action. So targeting employees with making an increase, or getting an increase in Net Promoter Score, is fundamentally misusing that process, and creates actually quite a bit of damage within organisations, because it's very difficult for employees to understand what they can do to meet that target. So it's really important to say that it is about human-to-human engagement and building relationships, and it is important to track progress. But it's also using the data appropriately and using it to be able to understand what the steps are doing is more important than benchmarking and targeting people against them.
So the main reason is to become customer oriented and not just take the NPS for something like just to complete my task. Sure,
Mm-hmm.
we should think about that. What about CSAT then?
But you need to understand how people feel about what you do. You can't get away from that. If we're not engaging with our customers, then we don't understand whether we're doing something right, whether we're doing something wrong. I have something I call like the 5 voices. One being the voice of employee, the voice of customer, the voice of service. So by that, I would use a metric like a mystery shop to look at how consistently do we deliver a service. And then you've got the voice of the process, and that's the internal operations. Are we seeing any issue with supply that might affect customer outcome? And then you've got the voice of the market, which is the 5th one. And that's important because your market might be changing, and what you do might not be relevant in 5-6 years' time. And we've certainly seen that on a global scale with the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of high street retailers globally have really struggled if they hadn't had either a click and collect or an online proposition, because all of a sudden their one stream of income was taken away from them because people weren't able to visit. And if they didn't have another channel to be able to engage with their customers, then they weren't making money in order to then fuel their growth and pay their staff and so on and so forth. So it's key to make sure that you have a rounded set of touch points in order to listen to customers, in order to understand them, and to understand where your market's going, as well as how the operation is working in the background. But those are supporting factors to the people that you have. The engagement directly between a person and a customer, an employee and a customer, is where effectively the magic happens. But it's also important to make sure that all of the processes in the background are geared up to ensure that they are also delivering to the customer and the employee's ability to deliver to that customer expectation.
Okay. What is the key, to being able to engage, empathize, and build customer loyalty?
I think there's a need to help every employee understand that purpose. They need to understand what their role does in the organization to help that end goal. Now, some people who might work in a finance team wouldn't necessarily think that they have a direct impact on an end customer if they're not doing anything that directly relates to the customer. Same way in different departments where there isn't necessarily a direct customer contact. They do have customers, they might not realize it, but other departments in their organization who they work with and how they provide information to them is actually a customer engagement and customer process. So there is a whole chain internally of processes that then enable that organization to deliver to that end customer. And helping employees understand that, know what their impact is, really does help with that empathy internally. It helps empathy between employees, it helps the engagement, and ultimately that then comes out when it comes to customer loyalty, because the organization is thinking about the outcome of that customer, how employees are able to service those customer needs, is then starting to translate into that customer experience. Is doing the right thing in the interest of the customer, or are they doing what they need to do just to make sure that the organization makes money? Yeah, it's very transparent. Customers are far more savvy than they ever were before, based on the plethora of different touch points and channels that they have available. But also now they've got smartphones. People have more information at their fingertips and will understand far faster if things are going as they should or if they're not.
What about when dealing with a frustrated customer? Like, are there any pointers or techniques you can share on de-escalating a frustrated customer?
Yeah, and again, it starts, for me, it starts with empathy, and it's about then closing that loop when customers are in crisis, and it's and recognizing that. So, I mean, I created a framework for that, which it was published in the last customer experience book, Customer Experience 2. And I call it Elastic Customer Recovery Framework. And that's about empathizing with that customer, then listening, really listening to what they're saying to you, and apologizing. There's absolutely no harm in saying sorry, but there seems to be this this barrier to saying sorry. We don't want to admit guilt. We're not saying that we've done something wrong. It doesn't matter. You're saying sorry that customer is having a poor experience at that moment in time through one reason or another, whether it's somebody's fault or not. It's not something that you want that customer to be going through at that point. So there's no harm in apologizing for the situation. But then importantly, it's about sorting it out. Sort it, make sure you fix the problem as best as you can while it's available to do so, and do it quickly. Don't let it fester for several days or weeks. The faster you can resolve that issue for that customer, the better. But it's also important to thank them. Thank them for telling you that there's been an issue, and that you've then got the opportunity to recover that customer and to fix the problem. A lot of customers won't necessarily complain. I think the stat is about 4% of customers will actively complain, and that's great for those who do come to you. You've got to act on it and you've got to fix it. But if that's just 4%, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the discontent that you might be creating within your customer base. And it doesn't take more than one or two poor experiences for a customer then to start seeking other channels or other services to meet their needs. So, and it's because it's unseen, you don't see it coming through your contact center, you don't see the complaints coming in. It's very hard to measure, if you don't have a touch point with that customer, whether they are you're hemorrhaging customers and they're going elsewhere. Because obviously your marketing teams will be developing customer relationships, so we'll be bringing in new customers all the time. And it's really difficult, if you don't manage this well, to know that you're having a positive impact on those that are not necessarily coming in contact with you. So that's about thanking them for coming and letting you know that there's an issue. But if you can't fix it there and then, it's still really important that you inform that customer what's going to happen, how long it's going to take, sticking to those promises. And then when you've resolved that issue with that customer, really spending the time with them to make sure that the issue is closed, and that it's closed in the eyes of the customer, not just in the eyes of the agent, the business that's dealing with it. And it's whilst that's a framework and a process to take people through, it really starts to help that engagement with customers who might be frustrated and challenged, and it makes them feel that you're doing everything you can, and you should be doing everything you can to fix the issue for them. And that's really key. It's unless there's something that really cannot be done because it's outside the control of everybody involved, then that's where empathy works. But that then will be seen more as sympathy. Empathy really happens when you can understand exactly where the frustration is coming from with that customer, and then you take relevant steps to fix that problem for them.
Okay, so being sincere and transparent really helps. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
once if you solve their issue, I think they will go on to become the like promoters of your company.
And that's the ultimate response, isn't it? That you turn detractors into promoters. Yeah, hence the net promoter thinking. But it's more than that. It's about keeping promises and making sure that people can trust you. And I think the financial crash in 2008 shook people's trust to the core. The one element that people felt was really solid was finances and the banking industry. And when that crashed and you could see what was going on, and all of a sudden it was publicized, people lost trust in a lot of different things. And then we're going through the pandemic at the moment, and things are cut back to basics. The UK's literally just gone back into another lockdown. So most of the shops are shut apart from those key shops. But then people are now trading on trust. If I have to go out to buy food, do I feel safe doing it? Can I trust that the retailer is doing everything they can to make sure that the products and the touch points that I come into contact with throughout that journey, am I being treated in a way that makes me feel safe? So trust will mean different things to different people in different situations, but it's starting to become much more meaningful when it comes to the customer experience at the moment.
So like trust is the only thing that will take us in the long run.
It's very important to it. Yeah. So that sincerity is key, but people have to meet their promises and they have to make sure that they deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on.
Agreed. So Nick, finally, are there any other sound bites like you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think your customer experience journey may have many stages, but it's really important to celebrate each stage because it's a small step. And remember that the most successful customer projects launch with the greatest anticlimax. So it's the less disruption, the less noise you hear about things going live, the better, because it means that your customers are accepting it, it's being delivered well, and people almost don't notice it. But it's where the change is eventful. The benefit to the customers and the employees is clear. Where it's uneventful, it really needs to be clear to employees and customers that change is really enhancing and enriching their engagements with you. So it's important that customer experience has that focus. Experience management is focused in the right way and for the right reasons. But just be really comfortable in the fact that if things seem to be going smoothly, they probably are, and that anticlimax is a sign of success, so it should be celebrated.
Nice, well said. So Nick, thank you so much for giving us your time. Your insights were really valuable, and I know our audience is really going to enjoy this interview.
That's brilliant. It's been a pleasure.
So guys, we'll be back with a whole new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one.